Welcome to the Police Academy's description of the Sergeant's Exam 2012 Sandford Divisional Profile. What I want to do here is to talk you through the important document that you've now received, to note any changes from last year's document, and to consider whether that has any relevance for possible exam topics, and to highlight a few important strategic issues. Why have the document? Well, it's to put every candidate on a level playing field, whether they normally work in a large or small, urban or rural police force. The divisional profile has an introduction page. It just sets the scene for the constabulary that you work for, the division, and the sector at West Ferry. What it shows us is that you're working in a typical semi-urban area, which is semi-industrial, has a diverse population with both the good and the bad and the ugly, and it's a quite diverse population. Just what we need in order to be able to set the scene for a few generic problems to deal with. The divisional profile shows us the distribution of resources. It shows us that we've got a number of departments that could be helpful to us. So for instance, we can see that Cole is a detective inspector that leads a public protection unit. And we've had in the past questions and scenarios where officers are struggling to deal with domestic abuse effectively. And so although you're going to retain ownership in the scenario for dealing with those issues and for monitoring and developing your staff, it may well be that you can go to the PPU in order to get help in terms of awareness raising and some key training support. Speaking of which, you can see I've put in 3 red borders around 3 particular resources I think that could be of particular benefit to you. Vickery is that divisional training officer, and it may well be that there's times it's the most effective and efficient way is to get Vickery to run some training for the team. It may be that you find one officer has a weakness, and so you'd decide that that officer will get some special support, but what you will do is retrain the whole team to ensure that standards are high throughout. There's a community engagement team that is available there to help you engage with, to communicate with, to understand a community. And they may well be able to help you in terms of having a communication strategy, an engagement strategy to work with hard to reach groups. It may well be that they can help with overcoming language barriers or other types of blockers to communication. They may well be able to help you locate and utilise those community leaders that we really need to help us engage properly with people. And I've also put a red border around the operations staff. We're going to talk about the recession and the relative shortage of overtime and issues like that, but it may be that you can get help from the operations team to get through the problems and to deliver service well. Here we can see some information around the tasking and coordination group. If you want overtime, if you want resources such as those operations staff we talked about, you come to the TCG to get it. But overtime is going to be hard in a time of recession, and the second column explains that the TCG will consider allocating resources and overtime from its budget. However, and it quotes, due to the current financial constraints, other methods may be implemented. I'll come on to what those could be, but you will need to expect to juggle around the resources you've got in order to manage the problems, and I don't think you'll be getting too much by the way of an overtime budget to help you deal with things. 2 issues I want to raise here on the centralised custody and call handling page. Centralised custody. Last year there were 4 custody suites in the divisional profile. This year there is just the 1. Now for me that's a significant change. Thinking practically, as a critical incident manager on a BCU, I have 3 custody suites. If we were to go down to just 1, well, we would struggle because of longer travelling times. Well, that won't be a problem for you because your team works at West Ferry and the custody suite is at West Ferry. So that's one good part. But the bad part potentially is that we've got a lot of other officers bringing their detainees to your suite, where that's going to mean delays potentially for your officers in dealing with things. It may be they've got to wait longer to get detainees in and to process them, to get time for interview suites, to have legal reps available for them. It may be that they are called upon to conduct searches for colleagues. It may well be, I think, that your officers may start to get hacked off. They may be quite upset about this inconvenience, and they may be doing good or bad things to avoid coming to the custody suite. Are they starting to cuff jobs? Are they not dealing with them properly? Now, it may well be that you can think of alternative ways through voluntary attendance, dealing with people away from the police station. Think of the necessity principle. Do we need to have people come into custody? It may well be that through street bail or through effective bail management processes, we can spread out the work so that we can have less times when we're at peak demand trying to make use of that suite as a team. Just be thinking around the issues that you can think about that might arise from having a smaller suite or only the one suite across the division, and how you could manage your team effectively to overcome the problems that occur. The call handling centre, I would just raise one particular reference to that. There is an IPAO system which talks about immediate, prompt attendance by appointment or no attendance. And for the prompt attendance, you can see that the service delivery expectation is that officers will attend within 1 hour. Watch your back. So we aren't doing it sometimes. If that happens, remember the service recovery model. I talked about it in the sorry tip of the week. You can hear that again if you look back. And that talks about 3 steps: apology, putting right the harm that's been done, and preventing reoccurrence. It's worthwhile remembering that service recovery model because you will be planning to apply it during this exam. Okay, sector management structure, and here we see your team. I've put in a red border your job, congratulations Sergeant, and I've also put in red border your team. Now we know from the letter that the NPIA has sent to you that you will be meeting Constables Cooper, Hoyle and Tang. And here you can see that you are the line manager, they are within your team. I'll talk more about them in the next tip of the week, as well as the 2 external role actors that you're going to meet. But I would make mention here that you can see you've got a constable vacancy and a PCSO vacancy. This exam will be testing you to make sure that you will ensure that you deliver the same quality of service with less resources. It's tough, but we're doing it day in and day out as a service already, and the exam wants to make sure that you can do that too. So how can you manage that? Well, you'll have to juggle people, find priorities, set expectations, and make use of the resources around you. And we can see from the sector that you can perhaps overcome the issues around visibility with special constables. You may well find that you can use the overlap time that the response teams have. You may be able to use some of the core response time that the response officers have when setting patrols. And you may be able to call on via the TCG those special ops resources that we can get our hands on if we ask nicely. Potential exam subjects I think could include maybe a PCSO or a special constable trying to step up to the plate and to do some of the work that missing constable is doing. And it may go wrong because they've not been sufficiently trained. And so typically for Osprey 2, good people do bad things, and it all needs to be solved, recovered, and plans made to recover it in the future. One tip I would give you is don't try to train people to do jobs they're not trained or expected to do. Don't try to make a PCSO do a constable's job. Don't expect special constables to be able to do a regular officer's job without all the training that a regular officer has. So they may be able to undertake aspects of it, but they couldn't cover it completely. The sergeant can make sure that we overcome those issues. And that'll be you. This page on number 7 shows us the project reform, and it tells us about all the problems that we've got in terms of the recession and cutbacks. Have a read of it. Nothing will surprise you there. But it does mean those 2 vacancies you've got as a constable and a PCSO, they're not going to get filled in a hurry. what you take away from this is that value for money is very important.